Okay, today is 25th of August, 2020. We have an opportunity to sit down with my friend and co-chairperson Mike Marasco here at his Dallas office. So we have a lot of questions to cover, just kind of get to know you a little bit and find out your involvement with helping our heroes and why you did it. But we were first chatting about your father. Can we talk about that first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I noticed that you put some posts out on Facebook for on Father's Day about your dad. Mm-hmm. Give us a story about your dad.
First generation American.
Okay.
Grandparents came from Italy, came over for their anniversary as a, not their anniversary, but as their honeymoon. And fell in love with America, went back, came back.
Okay.
Came in through Ellis Island.
Okay.
I actually have record of the boat that they were on and what their numbers were coming through Ellis.
Oh, we darn.
Which is kind of crazy. They settled in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And what I know about my grandfather, he was a jeweler. He was a silversmith.
Okay.
And I know my uncle, my father's oldest brother, was also a jeweler.
Okay.
And I remember as a little kid going to his jewelry shop and, sitting at his workbench and all that. But, it's typical, Italian-American family, big, Sunday gatherings, it was all about La Familia.
Yeah.
And, it was a great upbringing. It was, growing up in an Italian-American family, it was pretty cool. It wasn't the Sopranos, like everybody thinks. I mean, it was pretty normal. On my mother's side, my mother is, German, French, and Scottish.
Okay.
And, one of the things that I always remember is all of my aunts, or all of my uncles and my father, they all served in World War II.
Wow.
And they all served in different areas.
Okay.
They had different stories. I had, on my mother's side, a couple of her brothers. Two of them were in the Navy. One was an Army Ranger.
Yeah.
On my dad's side, his brother was in the Army. Didn't really talk about what Uncle Tony did during the war. And then there's my dad's story. That was, a pretty interesting story. He was actually stationed in Texas in flight school.
Okay.
And then he washed out of flight school and became a gunnery sergeant, or a gunnery. I think he was one of the waist gunners. Okay. On a B-24. And they were stationed in Foggia, which the interesting part about that is that's where Foggia, Italy. Okay. And it's the Puglia region, and it's kind of the heel of the boot.
Yeah.
And that was the 15th Bombardment Group was stationed in Foggia. And they were part of that.
So you got to go home a little bit.
You got to go home. Yeah. You got to see cousins.
Yeah.
Kind of. When I was younger, my father always spoke Italian because, every Sunday we'd go over to Aunt Zitzi's house and Italian was the only thing spoken.
Right.
But, so I'm sure he communicated for everybody in his, air group.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
Their first mission, they're going into Hungary. I don't know the exact mission, but as they were flying over Budapest on the way to the target, they experienced engine failure in all four engines, bailed out. And an interesting story about his bailout as he's coming down, on the parachute, he's going into a lake. And there was a German in a rowboat.
Wow.
That was pointing a submachine gun at him.
Wow.
And he kept yelling to the German, "Don't shoot," in Italian.
Okay.
And the German thought he was an Italian flyer.
I'll be darned.
So it wasn't until they pulled him into the boat that they realized he was a U.S. flyer.
Oh, wow.
And he spent the remaining, of remaining part of World War II in different Stalags.
It's terrible.
Prisoner war camps.
But his Italian roots literally saved his life.
Yep, absolutely.
And if it wasn't for your Italian roots, you wouldn't be here.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Did your dad ever talk about things or share much?
He never really talked about things. The only time there were stories were when other people were around that served.
Yeah.
My grandfather served, my mother's father, served in World War I in the Navy.
Okay.
So anytime they'd get together, they would tell stories. I do remember when I was in high school, I think I was a freshman in high school, my cousin and his friend showed up from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And his friend had just gotten back from Vietnam.
Yeah.
So you had, my father at the kitchen table, my grandfather, and then this friend, all telling stories about several different wars.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting.
That is cool.
You sit back and just listen to it. Everybody at that time, you couldn't throw a stone 2 feet without hitting, a World War II vet.
Right.
And
The greatest generation.
yeah, I mean, I'd come home from school, we're living in Philadelphia, and, a poker game would have broken out into our kitchen.
Yeah.
And they're just all a bunch of, World War II vets sitting around playing poker.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's sad, if you're on Facebook and you subscribe to a couple of different sites, they're always, relaying that generation passing.
Yeah.
And, they're 95, 93, and at some point in time, they're all going to pass. And
Right.
it's going to be, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Who's the next great generation?
That's a good question. It's definitely, when I was in high school, my number was 191.
Okay.
And in the draft in 1972, I was still in high school. I would graduate in the summer of 73.
Yeah.
And by the end of 72, Nixon, stopped the draft. Shut it down.
Yeah.
So that was, that was just an interesting war.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, our good friend Carl.
Yeah.
I mean, they came back from that war and they got no support.
Yeah. Terrible.
They were on their own, and we didn't even know then what we know now about, PTSD and the effects it had, the long-term effects it has on you.
Yeah.
And it's not even people from Korea or Vietnam. It goes all the way back to World War II.
Yeah.
They had those effects. They just called it depression.
Yeah. Dealt with it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned some of these things about, your dad from World War II. That would have been my grandfather was in World War II, and he never talked about anything. Mm-hmm. And then my dad was in during the Vietnam War, never talked about anything.
Right.
And then when I came home from overseas, I didn't want to talk about it. But there was one night that he had come down and he drove his RV and he stayed in our driveway. Mm-hmm. Everybody went to bed. It was within a week of being home, and then coincidentally I ended up outside talking in his RV. We had a few beers and we talked at length about a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. His dad, his experience, my experience. We shut the door and we didn't talk about it again. Right. It's just, but it was when you're talking about your family members getting together, and then they kind of gave them permission to talk about it. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do, helping our heroes, is kind of break down those walls. That it's okay to talk about things. Mm-hmm. It's okay not to be okay. So let's jump into that a little more specifically. You are the co-chair of Helping Our Heroes, mm-hmm. and been around since the very beginning. One of your friends, your dear friends, Trip Bomar, was helped start this. So tell us about your involvement with Helping Our Heroes. What do you do as the co-chair?
It's, I've had, several different functions.
Yeah.
Throughout the years since, we started this, 9 years ago?
Yeah. This is year 10, yeah.
Yep, year 10. And, anything from, the main thing is raising money.
Right.
No matter what you're assigned to do, your end goal is raising money.
Yeah.
So that, if you're the auction chair, it doesn't mean you just go out and talk about auctions.
Right.
I mean, you constantly have to have your ears open and talk about it.
Right.
One of the, it's been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of frustrations.
Yeah.
We've changed quite a few different things, but if you really look back in my involvement with other charities, Cattle Barons, my involvement with Family Place, my involvement with Hendricks Scholarship Fund.
Sure.
It's, raising money is extremely difficult.
Right.
Because there are so many people out there trying to raise money.
Right.
And, you have passion for what you're raising money for.
Yeah.
And that passion is what keeps you going.
Right.
And you know what good it does.
Right.
Now it's just a matter of expressing that good to everybody else. With this pandemic, every charity in Dallas has canceled their events.
Yeah.
You have a lot of uncertainty of where our economy's going. How strong we're going to bounce back.
Right.
And so the giving dollars are very tight this year.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you just stop trying.
Right.
We have to figure out just different ways of getting ourselves out there.
Right.
So those are all different areas that I try to contribute to in helping our heroes.
Right. So you mentioned, the need is still there, right? The veterans are still unfortunately committing suicide, homeless, PTSD. I mean, it's a long list of painful things that veterans still struggle with. And now this year it's different because we had to cancel, or I'd like to say we are rescheduling our events to early 2021. And we talked as a board about trying to raise 2020 for 2020. Can you give us a little insight on that?
Yeah, 2020 for 2020, it's, we're going to do it a little bit differently. Instead of, we're in an environment where you can't have events, you shouldn't have events. So we're going to go ahead and, create an awareness through social media and on what is still needed, and really kind of try to dig down into, people's, psyche on how they can help.
Sure.
Everybody still wants to help. Everybody still wants to help with, one of the reasons we called it Helping Our Heroes wasn't necessarily military, but it was, first responders. Now you have, healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers that that need help. And so that all plays into that. I think we've done an excellent job in raising awareness and raising capital for the Simplify Foundation,
Right.
Marine Corps Scholarship Fund,
Right.
Folds of Honor,
Right.
22 Kill. These are all, organizations that, even though we're not having our events, still need help.
Exactly.
So how do we get that help to those organizations?
Right.
And it has to be through social media awareness.
Right. So our goal with the 20 and 20 for 2020 is we want to raise $20,000 for the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. We also want to raise $20,000 for the Simplify Fund or the Americas Fund in the year 2020. So that's our little tagline, 20 and 20 for 2020. So I think Mike came up with that slogan. That's creative and our goal for this year. Mike, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the events. You've been involved since the very beginning, and we've had a lot of different events over the last, decade now. Can you take us through some of the events that we have done, maybe some of the favorite events that you participated in, and what we have planned for the future?
Sure. Our first event was very interesting. I mean, here you have
being nice.
Here you have a group of financial services individuals trying to put on a charity event.
Right.
And our attitude was, God, raising money is easy. We do it all day long. How hard can it be? Well, it's hard. We got some help from, an outside individual who worked with the event that took place that kind of started all this in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And then we kind of keyed off of what we learned from him. We hired our own people and, kept doing these events, and the events kept evolving. The first event was very clunky. We didn't raise as much as we wanted to, but it was a successful event.
Right.
And it gave us the opportunity to find out how we can change these events and make them better, make them fun, and make them practical, and make them beneficial.
Right.
And we, started, splicing and dicing and putting ideas together. And we decided that at one time, our events were always, as we put together a gala event, it was always on a Sunday night with the golf tournament following Monday. That's great because we wanted to keep it around 9/11.
Yeah.
Keep 9/11 in front of everybody's mind. I mean, what happened was terrible, and it should never happen again, and it will never happen again. But we then were competing against the Dallas Cowboys.
Which you don't want to do in Dallas.
And, it's very hard to get people to come to an event on a Sunday against America's team.
Yeah.
And we even tried to incorporate Roger Stahl back into our events.
Yeah.
And,
Which he attended. Yeah.
Which he attended.
Yeah, that was great.
He came to the first golf event we had. And so we decided, through walking through that process, we decided to change the events to a Saturday gala and then a following Monday golf tournament. And those have been our last, 2 events, and they've worked out very well. I mean, people had a good time at the gala. It was very relaxed, and people had a great time at the golf tournament. I think one of the things that everybody loves seeing at the golf tournaments is, all the ecstatic displays we get from, 214.
Yeah.
And, they do a great job. They're ready to help us anytime we, give them a call and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Another part of the event that I find that, kind of, heartstrung is the honor guard. And not only the honor guard, but also the junior ROTC.
Yeah.
Here you have a bunch of kids that are in high school that are in the ROTC program because they have a vision. They already have a vision of what they want to do when they get out of high school. Some of that vision may be, a military academy. Some of it may be just going into, a branch of service. But it's great to see that much focus out of young people.
Right.
I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, so since you mentioned it, I'll give a shout out to the W.T. White Junior ROTC program. They've helped us at least 6 or 7 years that I know of, and a couple other local units. And you mentioned 214, which is 2nd Battalion, 14th Marines. To that point, it shows kind of our partnership with the local Marine Corps, whether it's the Reserve Unit in Grand Prairie, the big base out in Fort Worth, the recruiters that are established all over DFW. And you're talking about the board. In the beginning, it was kind of clunky, just a bunch of arrogant financial services people say, we could do this. I'm thankful that our board is diversified a little bit more, a lot more now, with a pretty good representation of people from the military and the Marine Corps specifically. So you're right, the events have we have figured it out, and to your credit, I'll say that, Mike has been very visionary in taking feedback. We did copy an event in St. Louis that is run very successfully, But here in Dallas, we continue to fine tune it to the point where you're talking about now. It's the gala and the golf event are separate. And I know that there are a lot of galas and golf events that happen across the country, especially here in DFW for veterans. But tell us about some of the things that make it unique. You know, what's different about our golf event versus other golf events? What's different about our gala versus other galas? And it may be, you know, the speakers that we bring in, you know, typically the higher ranking officers and the injured vets. You mentioned the static displays and our partnerships for the golf, and we do a lot of fun stuff there. So either one of those you want to tackle?
Sure. Yeah, actually, I think that what makes our events so successful, it's not, the people on the board, the committees and all that. It's the people that come to the events. It's some of our title sponsors. The Christensen Family Group, Mary Campbell, Amerisouth. They have all been excellent contributors and sponsors to these events.
Yeah.
And it's because of people like them, these events aren't successful without those people.
Yeah.
Without the people that recognize the need and step up and help us gather what we can gather.
Right.
We're going into our 10th year, or our 10th event, more like 11 years. And, over that time period, which I think is excellent, based upon the competition you have out there to raise charity funds through donations from our, key people, from the people that I just mentioned, and matching of corporations.
Yep.
We've raised over $1 million.
Right.
And like I said, to the America Fund or Semper Fi Foundation, Marine Corps Scholarship Fund, Folds of Honor, 22 Kill, all these groups have benefited from us, the hard work that we've done and the contributions from our, key people.
Good. So you mentioned $1 million. One thing that I'll add, which I think is great, the Bob Parsons from GoDaddy was matching everything that we gave away for a number of years and still does, which is fantastic. So that $1 million is actually $1 million that we have raised and been able to contribute to helping veterans. So, because I know some organizations are big and they're raising $1 million for a big charity isn't that big a deal, but for a small charity like us, where we have very little expenses, we've actually raised and given away over $1 million over the last 10 years, which I think is fantastic for a grassroots effort.
And I mean, there's other ways that, this year we're not going to have the golf tournament or the gala because of COVID-19.
Right.
But there are other ways that you can still contribute.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be large contributions. North Texas Giving Day. You can go onto our website and and donate during North Texas Giving Day. Another simple way of doing this, now that everybody is online shopping, and Amazon is being utilized more than ever.
Okay.
It was utilized quite a bit before COVID-19, but even more so now. Go on to Amazon Smiles. We're on Amazon Smiles, where you can go ahead and, signify that everything that you buy through Amazon Smiles, they will donate to the charity of your choice through those purchases.
Yep.
And that's just a simple way. You might not think that's, very much, not that big of a deal.
Right.
But if we get 25,000 people to do that for us,
right,
that money, those contributions start adding up in a quick way. And
a big time help.
It's it's nothing more than as we're in the financial services arena.
Yep.
It's basically compounding.
Right. So if you go on Amazon Smiles or like we both work at Wells Fargo, there's ways that Wells Fargo will match our contributions. The formal name of our organization through the IRS is called Helping Our Heroes Foundation, Inc. So if you're looking for that and you see a bunch of Helping Our Heroes, you don't know which one it is, obviously reach out to Mike or I or through social media, but look for Helping Our Heroes Foundation, obviously in the North Texas area. Mike, let's talk a couple minutes about the upcoming events for 2021. I know we have some things planned for the spring and the fall. Can you touch on either one of those?
Yeah, we decided that, instead of doing the golf tournament and the gala in the fall like we always have,
right?
The golf tournament in September, the gala in November around Veterans Day. Because we're having to postpone it this year, we decided to, we're doing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I think that's how, we work best, is through adapting.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and do our golf tournament in the spring.
Right.
And then we're going to still keep the gala in the fall. One of the things I talked about, before is not only North Texas Giving Day or Amazon Smiles, but if you want to be part of the golf tournament and the gala, you can go ahead and purchase your table, purchase your foursome now for 2021. And you can purchase this by just going to our website, helpingourheroes.us, and it'll be on the website where you can either choose from golf tournament and gala, or just golf tournament. Or if you don't want to do any of that, if you want to be a sponsor the beverage tent, sponsor music, you can do that.
So donations of any size.
Donations of any size.
So a couple things that I think is fantastic. One, that we already have the events planned for 2021. You mentioned the golf event in the spring. We are fairly confident it'll be at Las Colinas Country Club. And again, you mentioned Carl Fight, the veteran that was a big contributor for us. We're going to call it the Fight for Honor, kind of a memorial for him and a play on words with his last name. It's going to be a really, really special event in the spring this year, so make sure you come out for that. And then the gala, like Mike said, is likely going to be the weekend before or after Veterans Day, just to tie all that stuff in together. We always have great speakers, typically a higher ranking officer and a local injured service member, and I'm sure that'll continue for this year. Great speakers, a lot of fun. So if let me close with a couple things here for basically thanks. First of all, thank you, Mike. Mike Marasco is a dear friend, a great American, and where we started off about talking about your father, I could tell there's pride in your Italian heritage and your grandfather and your uncles, and especially your dad. I have a lot of pride in knowing you and working with you over the last 10 years with Helping Our Heroes, because he's a leader servant. He is always willing to help out. He has been on the board since inception, and a co-chair, a decade later, shows his loyalty and dedication. Your insightfulness and your insight and your work ethic, and this guy is literally flipping burgers at our events as the co-chair, and it's a great example. So
nobody's gotten food poisoning
yet. But thank you. I want the world to know that you're an American hero, and we appreciate you doing everything you do. And then secondly is, for all of you out there, Mike mentioned it a few times, we're a grassroots effort. We're a small charity here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that's doing amazing things for our veterans, our first responders, our police officers, and we need you to join our army, if you will. So follow us on social media. Donate of any size, small or large. We'd love to help you out, because we're going to raise $20,000 for Semper Fi Fund. We're going to raise $20,000 for the Marine Corps Scholarship Fund in 2020. So thank you very much for your time, Mike. Thank you very much for your leader servant attitude and everything you've done over the last 10 years. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.